Well, super excited to have our guest here today, Shane Neman. He just launched his new book, NightLife Lessons,
Yeah.
and it's a story on how you started your business in the nightlife, and I guess really just the story of entrepreneurship as a whole in your journey. So really glad to have you here, Shane. It's been
Thank
a
you.
long time since we connected, but really glad to see your book. We're going to be giving away a copy here for people, so stick around to the end, and we'll be able to answer some questions for Shane as well. But Shane, why don't you, give us the overview of the book. Tell us why now, why did you want to write this, and give a little bit of backstory.
Yeah, sure. I did not do this for the money. I can tell you that because I don't think I'll ever recoup the time and money that I spent on it. It was really just a bucket list thing for me to do. And I also now for the last, let's say, decade, I've been, backing founders and startups. And I found myself telling them the same stories over and over again when the shit hits the fan for them, or when they need help or advice, or just I've seen that situation before. And so I thought I'd write a book and compile all these lessons into one about one of the earliest startups that I did. It wasn't the first startup that I did. The first startup I did it for almost 2 years and then it failed. And this was the first successful startup I did subsequently, which happened to be in the nightlife industry. It merged tech and nightlife and events. This was in, let's say, like 2001. This is like a pre-Facebook, pre-MySpace, pre-camera phone era, pre-MailChimp, and all those things that everyone takes for granted right now. So none of those things really existed at that time. And that happened to be an advantage for us. And we built those tools for, ticketing, and there was no Eventbrite or anything like that. And so that was an almost decade-long journey for me. And I did it in New York City, which is a really hard place to survive, especially in the nightlife business. And I learned some really valuable lessons, and I compiled them into different chapters here. But I think what's different about this book versus many other, the millions of other business books out there, is that it's in an unlikely industry. It's funny, it's edgy, it's unlikely, right? And I think what I wanted to do was in each chapter, not just give you kind of stories and lessons, but show you how I use those lessons and stories in my subsequent startups, because I did several startups after that. And now in my investing, I run a family office, so I do a lot of venture, real estate, private equity type investing. And so it taught me a lot of that one industry and one business, taught me a lifetime of lessons. And I thought I'd put it into a book in a coherent way that was also entertaining and valuable to anyone who really wants to start any type of business.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think the nightlife scene in New York had to be pretty crazy, and building out that at the prime of like the technology boom as well had to be pretty exciting. So, without giving too many spoilers from the book, what are kind of the core, I guess, things that you learned that might be helpful for first-time founders, people who are just starting out, that you share?
So, my journey was really, if you told me before, I was in medical, I went to NYU Med and I dropped out of medical school. I have a degree in computer science. And, if even 5 days before I actually started the company and found myself doing this, you told me that I would be in the nightlife business and I would succeed and it would set the stage for other successes in my life, I would have thought you were crazy bananas. And it was really never something that I thought I would get into, but it turned out that I found success in there. And I think that one of the things that people have to, especially entrepreneurs, have to take into account is that you might find success in the most unlikely of places in your journey. And you should be open to what is showing you, what way is showing you to that success, and not just say, this is the only way, being narrow-minded. It's about, it's cliche what I'm going to tell you, but it comes from this thought that, you have to just go with the flow and see where it takes you, and make the right decision based on the options available to you. And if you consistently do that on a long-term basis, you'll find success. But then, there are also some pretty interesting other lessons in the book, mainly about all the different times I got screwed over and the unique and creative ways that I got screwed over. Because, club guys and owners and promoters and event guys, they're very creative in the way that they could do that to you. And so, but they taught me great lessons of how to judge people's characters, how to assess risk, how to deal with failure, deal with losing money, and, getting back and doing it again. The first chapter is, the name of the first chapter, the title of the first chapter is How to Be Fake. And, if you want to go into the nightlife business, for example, how do you start? If you don't have a name for yourself, how do you do your first event? How do you do your first party? How do you open your first club? You got to fake it, right? And you will likely really fail. But the people who don't fail are the ones that try that one more time that everybody gives up. And that, this is universal to all businesses, right? Not just in the nightlife business. I think that if you're young, you'll find this book really entertaining because it has some pretty cool, funny stories. I also think that a lot of people don't really understand the mechanics of how nightclubs and nightlife works, which I think is interesting as well. So that kind of gets explained here. But those are some of the really great lessons that I learned through that startup called Junebug that I did.
Yeah. No, I love all of that. I think one of the things too that I've been trying to get better at is identifying people's character, right? You mentioned that was something that you got screwed over. Like, obviously, I think that probably happens more in the nightlife industry than most. Although I think real estate, there's a lot of
yes.
people in real estate too. So are there things that you pick up on, like when you first meet someone? Are there things that people say? Are there things that people do? How can other people, I guess, identify people that they should do business with or should not do business with?
Well, I have some basic rules of ways that I do business. And if you don't want to do business with me on those terms, then I just won't do it, right? Like, if I send you, I'll give you a simple one. This has nothing to do about being screwed over or anything like that. But if I send you an email and I don't hear from you until like 2-3 days later, like, I'm not going to do business with you, because that's not who I am and that's not how I operate, right? And so my expectation is that, I don't expect you to email me back like within a minute or an hour, but within 24 hours. I think that's something that I strive to do, right? And so, especially if I'm running a business, I mean, if it's like something personal, that's different. But in terms of business, those are some of the rules I have. And I actually have this theory that 99% of people are trustworthy and good. And so you should always lead with thinking that people are not out to get you and screw you over until they prove you wrong. And, you know, that was the case. It was really the exception to the rule that you would get screwed over. But, you know, when you do something for 10 years, right, you get into all different kinds of scenarios where that does happen. So I think that it's maybe foolish to have a preconceived notion about someone when you first meet them. It's more about how you interact with them, how they interact with you, and if they're kind of following the same rules that you apply to the way that you run your business, and whether or not you want to do business with them based on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. Are there any I don't know what you can share, but are there any like, what's the craziest story that you have from the nightlife industry, or how you got screwed over? Is there anything like any interesting story that you can share with people?
Yeah, I mean, I've had like checks stolen from us where, you know, we were doing an event at a club, and the day before it was New Year's. New Year's is like the night that everybody goes out, right? So
Yeah.
that's the night to make a lot of money. New Year's, Halloween, Thanksgiving Eve. There's like a few nights that everybody goes out. We had a venue that we rented out to do an event. It was a really big nightclub in New York. And the day before, they called us, and we had met. You have to prepay, right? And so we sent them, like, I don't know, like it was like a crazy check, like $100,000 check or something like that. Messengered it over the day before because that's when it was due. And then they called us and said they never got the check, and they were gonna not let anyone into the event. And you know, when you have 20, 30, 40 events going on at one day and there's chaos, you know, we called and we tried to confirm that it was delivered, but they weren't being reasonable. So we sent another check to them the same day, and then forgot to cancel the other check. They cashed both checks, and we ended up losing a ton of money, right? So those are like some of the, you know, crazy times. And, you know, there are more stories like that where people give you fake credit cards, and, you know, it was a different era. Right now you have Stripe, so you can like pre-charge someone, but you're talking about 20 some odd years ago, right? So
right.
Different.
Yeah, I've heard. It was funny. I just saw like this clip on TikTok or wherever about how much the nightlife or clubs have changed over the last, like, I guess 10 years, because now it's like all just around bottles. There's no dance floor. Like it's so focused around like tables and that side of things that it changed like so much.
So the hospitality business now is really sophisticated, right? They employ CRM. They know everything about you. They know when your birthday. They know if you've gone to this restaurant that they have in Vegas, and then the one in New York and the one in LA, and how much you spent and who was with you. And they can kind of use these data points to then, you know, get you into another venue and to spending even more money, or what DJ you like, what kind of music you like. You know, there's all this sophistication that never existed before, but, you know, I think it started then, right? Even listen, what was even more interesting for the tech people here is that there's a bunch of chapters on how I solved a lot of technical problems that, there was no MailChimp, right? There was no ESPs back then, right? So we had built a huge database of over 1 million people. I had to custom build that kind of stuff, like put servers in a rack and write software that sends out, 1 million emails and load balances against these servers that, this is a time where nothing was off the shelf like it is now, right? That, like, Squarespace didn't exist where you could make your own for Wix. Everything was like hand coded, and so that presented an opportunity, right? Because if it was easy to do, then everybody would have done it. But
right. Yeah, I think that's what makes the current era that we're in now both like easy to get started, but harder to actually gain market share. And I'm sure you've probably noticed this with the companies that you've invested in, and just, keeping up with technology. I know that you're very on top of everything from like real estate to tech and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I guess I think it's a cool segue into the next question, which would be like, for companies starting out now that there is kind of this, I wouldn't say like level playing field, but I mean, it's definitely, I could start a new business probably in a few hours,
Sure.
like from like incorporation to website to having like an email list, socials all set up, like
even an app. You can get an app done with a no-code,
exactly.
system. Yeah,
exactly. With Bubble and Zapier, and like there's a lot of ways to do these things. So how do you advise companies to, I guess, differentiate themselves? How do you what's your advice for people who are starting out trying to carve a lane for themselves? How would you suggest someone goes about starting like a tech company in today's day and age with the competition and the ease of access for everyone?
So, for me, the startups that I did, Junebug, which was a tech stack, which we did different things like emailing and ticketing. We were one of the first ticketing systems out there. Believe it or not, when we first started, we would mail, physical tickets to people, right? and that's how they would come to the event, right? The idea of getting a PDF in your email and printing it with a barcode was like, I don't know, magic, right? At that time. So, Ticketmaster was kind of doing it, but like they would never give that it was too expensive for the small guys to do. And so, in retrospect, and then the next company I did was Easy Texting, which is basically like MailChimp for text messaging, right? Same concept as an email service provider, but sending text messages. And we were really the first ones to do it. This is like 3 years even before Twilio existed in 2005, right? So we had the first SMS API, we had the first platform, and it's a really big business right now. But what's interesting about the businesses that I did, I think, is none of it was like rocket science, right? It was kind of hard to do it and get it, but it wasn't like impossible, and it wasn't like we didn't have competition. It wasn't, there wasn't some crazy moat that we had in terms of being able to build the product itself. So with that said, I think what really differentiated us was, being able to be a great marketer, right? Being able to sell, right? Like get on the phone. Like when I did Easy Texting or even Junebug, right? Like I physically went to locations, and that's underrated and underappreciated right now, right? I physically showed up. I physically, talked to people. I picked up the phone. I talked to people on the phone, And that's how we landed the first 50, 100 customers, right? I had to learn what was that 1 or 2 sentence magic bullet explanation of what I do and how I can hook you in that 1 or 2 sentences. And so that only comes with actually physically going somewhere, physically talking, trying, and I mean, it's like real in IRL A/B testing, right? It's very, I think, foreign to a lot of people right now, but I think that will give you a big advantage. And so once you get that momentum of your first 50, 100 customers, then you can really kind of template that out and then start to scale it. So I don't think you need like, you don't need like the AI that no one could replicate, or, you know, that kind of thing going on. And really, none of the businesses that I started, although they got really big, I wasn't building them to sell them, which I think that's a different mindset. And it's the mindset that's been going on for a long time now, right, in the tech world. I was really building them thinking that that was going to be my career and I needed to make money off of it. And I think like the financial situation right now, if you're looking at businesses that are getting funded, they have a clear path to profitability. They're not just like, you know, thinking that they can do whatever they want and burn as much as they want to sell themselves at some point. So as an investor, I'm looking for people who are responsible. They have a clear path to how they're going to break even, or at least they think they're going to break even. And that's been underappreciated for a really long time.
Yeah, totally agree on that. Yeah, I think especially right now, you know, most of the VCs and investors that I've been talking with, they're all looking at companies now that are actually making money or are getting to that. I think the you know, the way of just investing, you know, like people have been for the last few years, is kind of coming back to reality a little bit. And I think it's affecting a lot of earlier stage startups more. You know what I mean? For us, like we've been making money since, you know, we started, right? Initially it was through events, which I think is a really interesting way and helpful for a lot of different entrepreneurs to actually meet their customers, get in the room with their customers and, you know, users or whoever, right? Actually have those in-person conversations because you get to learn a lot more about them. So that was really helpful for us. We're going to start doing events again here soon because now the timing's worked out with, you know, our product and everything else that we've been doing over the last few years. But yeah, I think that's super interesting. I think to your point around marketing, sales, like really just kind of getting after, I think that's something that, you know, like we're really leaning into now, because what I've noticed is, hopefully we still got you. I know it looks like your camera just went off, but what I've noticed over the last few years is that distribution from a standpoint of being able to differentiate yourself is huge. So if you have distribution, that changes a lot of opportunities. There we go. Okay,
sorry, I don't know what happened there. That was really strange. It just
it's all good. It's all good. I wasn't sure, your camera went off and then you came back. But basically what I was saying is I've noticed that distribution has become increasingly more important. And what I've noticed is that you're seeing this with creators and influencers starting billion-dollar brands in crazy time. From The Rock to his tequila brand now that's huge, to Mr. Beast and Feastables, to Logan and KSI with Prime. They're building these brands around, they're building the distribution first and then building a brand from that, right? Same with like Nelk and Happy Dad. Like there's so many of these use cases now that I think that's a very interesting point to potentially even start at first and then build a business based on your following and your distribution audience, like whatever that may be. And that's something too for us. Like now we're getting a ton of job seekers and just professionals, not necessarily just entrepreneurs anymore. So we're now figuring out, okay, what other products do these people want? How can we, how can we sell to this large audience now that we've been gaining versus trying to just keep, pushing the same thing or trying to sell to the wrong product or a product to the wrong audience, I think is also something that's very interesting.
Just to kind of expand on that point that you're saying is that, I think it's important for, your members and the people listening to this who may not, so they may not be a celebrity, right? So they might not have like a large following. Those people really have an easy time getting funded because, as you said, they have the distribution channel already. But what happens when you don't have the distribution channel, right? How do you make your distribution channel? Or, the other people that are getting funded right now are multi-exit founders, right? That have done it 3 or 4 times, 2 or 3 times before. And, when you make an investor a lot of money and you go back to them and say, hey, I'm going to do it again, sure, they're going to throw money at you. It's a sure shot for them in that sense. But I think what, founders that don't have that pedigree, right, should kind of pay attention to is building a business where you don't really need an investor, right? And investors want to invest in stuff where you don't need them. It's really counterintuitive, right?
Oh, for sure.
So like it's like dating, right? Like that you want to date the person who's unavailable and doesn't care, right? So it's the same concept. There is that I want to invest in a company where I can see that the founder either has those 2 things that I kind of told you about before, or they really don't need me and they're on their own path right now, but I can see where they're going to go. So that's interesting. And the other thing that's interesting for me in particular, and I don't know about other investors, is that if I see a founder that's kind of had a failed startup 2 or 3 times before, and not like just like a bullshit one where they did it for like a month or 2 or whatever, but they really did something and they did it for a while and it just didn't work out, and they're starting something new, I like to invest in those types of founders because the likelihood of them winning this time is higher, and it shows me that they have the emotional fortitude and to get up and try again, and like run through the brick wall, that people talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very important failure is just something that just comes with entrepreneurship. So, it's just like one of those things where it's almost just like part of the ride. Like you have to just accept that as something that's going to continue to happen. On
that note, sorry to interrupt you. On that note, in the book, there's like, I don't know, 1,000 times when I almost lost my business, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a long business. It's like 10 years of that business. And there's no time that you kind of feel comfortable, right? If you feel comfortable, you're doing something wrong. That's really you like, if you're comfortable and you're going in and like, you know, you get in at 9, you leave at 6 or 5, and you know, you don't think about work until the next day. That's not like how it really works in real life. If like, unless you have a job somewhere, right, and you're working.
Right. Yeah. Or unless like you're, yeah, I mean, yeah, unless you're just like corporate, yeah, unless you get to the point where it's so big that it's, yeah, kind of running on its own. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's, no, I think, is there anything, I mean, obviously I want people to check out the book, and I'm sure you have things in there around failure and how to get through that, but do you have any things that you'd like to share that helped you get through that? Like, what did you do when you were close of either, you know, going out of business or failing, whatever? Like, what did you do in that moment? Were you like, do you hunker down? Do you work more? Do you think of new revenue streams? Do you just try to sell the crap out of it? What was going through your head, and how did you get through that?
I think, you know, that each situation is obviously different. So there were times when I went through lawsuits where I thought I would lose my business, right? And there were some times when business was bad and I thought I would lose my, or someone stole from us and I thought, so each situation is really different. I think what kind of got me through most of the time was just trying everything I could, using every resource I could, and leaning on anyone I could that would help me in any way possible, like emotionally, right? So like family, if you have family, friends, that kind of thing, they will sit down and let you talk, and you go through like the different scenarios in your mind, and you come up with answers. You know, having mentors helps, and just really not, you know, it's again cliche, not giving up, and never thinking that giving up is an option, right? Or losing is an option. If you think that, you know, that if that becomes an option for you, then you're going to take it. But when it's never in your mind, right? Then you're constantly looking for alternatives of what you could do to get to the other side of whatever the problem is that you have. And sometimes it takes a really long time. And sometimes the solution's not there immediately. And sometimes you have to suffer for, you know, a good bit of time before you get to where you need to be. But most of the time, and sometimes you can't solve it, and you have, you know, like, let's be practical here. But I feel like the majority of the time that I approached a problem that way and didn't see the option of just letting go, I've been able to overcome it eventually.
That's great advice. I think, yeah, I think that's great advice. I want to be careful on time. How are you doing on time? I have one more question, and then we'll open up to some Q&A, but I want to be
sure. I'm okay. Okay. Sure. No problem.
Okay, fantastic. So I want to talk about the acquisition side of stuff. I think that's something that obviously a lot of entrepreneurs want to, you know, eventually have happen, of, you know, an exit of some sort. It's something that, you know, we're gonna be going through over the next year, who knows, as we continue to grow. So I'm curious, like, how did that come to be? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? You know, walk us through how your acquisitions went, and then how you've seen others go down.
So I had 2 acquisitions, one for Junebug and one for Easy Texting. I acquired several businesses myself. So one I acquired a few small competitors when I was doing easy texting. And then even post exit, I acquired a couple of businesses that, were cash flowing businesses. What's interesting, again, is it's in the same vein of what I said to you about venture guys right now who want to invest in you when you don't need them, right? You get the best acquisition results when you don't need anyone to acquire you, right? Because basically, you're making money and it doesn't really matter if someone acquires you. So that's something to keep in mind. There are, I know that right now, and when I was doing this, this didn't exist, but there's, like acquire.com and Flippa and like all these other websites right now where you can list your company for sale. And you could probably get a reasonably good price for your company if you have a good company there, and they'll give you like sell side advice. They have people there that will help you value your company and that kind of thing. But I think one thing to kind of consider is that if you decide to sell or you're approached to sell and you're in that process, first of all, it's never guaranteed until the day that you get the wire and you sign. So don't count your chickens until there were a bunch of false starts that I went through, and where I thought that I was gonna do what I, close it, and I was gonna like go on vacation the next day or whatever. That never materialized. The other thing that I think that you should consider is that, a lot of people like to kind of come off on their best foot, get you excited, hook you in, and then renegotiate with you at the last minute to see how, desperate you are to sell. So that's also a function of whether or not you're making money. So like you will never undersell yourself if you're really doing well. So like, you can walk away at that point. So if someone is trying to renegotiate with you or something like that. As for me, when I actually ran both businesses together, Junebug and Easy Texting. Easy Texting came out of the necessity for me to send text messages for Junebug because the efficiency of sending emails had deteriorated a lot during that time. As you can imagine, like every club and promoter and everyone had their own email list, and Facebook came out and all this other kind of stuff. And so I wanted to cut through the clutter and send text messages. And, I developed the first version of Easy Texting, and then people were asking me how I did that. And I realized that could be its own product. Yeah, just to kind of fast forward. And for almost 2 years, I ran those businesses together. And then I came to the realization that Easy Texting is a much better business. It's a SaaS model, recurring revenue than the other business. So I just approached a couple of my competitors that were always nipping at our heels and said, hey, look, why don't you see if you can acquire us and we'll work out a deal. And you can get creative in those scenarios where if you go to a competitor, you can finance the deal. It's called seller financing. So maybe they don't have all the money at that point, but they have some of it, or they can get investors to give you money, and then you can they can earn out the rest of the acquisition like that. So there are a lot of creative ways that you can get a deal done in that instance. And going to a strategic acquirer like a competitor sounds good. For Easy Texting, we actually got approached a bunch of times because it was a highly profitable, highly fast-growing company, and we actually ended up getting acquired by one of our customers that was using us all the time. And they were strategic too, but again, we like, no one cared about us because we weren't VC backed, right? It was bootstrapped, and so like there was no hype around it. But when I went to go sell my company, no one really knew how to value it because they'd never seen a SaaS company with like 60% margins, right? Like it's just, you know, that still growing at like, you know, a 40% clip without like, and making money. Like it was impossible. Like they couldn't do it. So that's, you know, that's another reason why you want to kind of be fiscally responsible with your company and really kind of, in my opinion, strive for profits. I know there are a lot of other VCs that do not think like I do, right? And everybody has their success in different ways. And, you know, they're like, oh, well, you know, you came up with a good idea, blow it out and just try and grow the business as much as you can and, you know, spend all the money. So if you want to get acquired, especially in this environment, right, where you can buy a treasury bill and get 5.5% on a treasury bill, like you need to be making money, right? And so some people want to buy cash flowing businesses in this environment. So those are some of the things that to take into consideration when you want to sell or you want to buy a company. Another way to grow your business is if you can profitably acquire other businesses. You know, there are a lot of startups right now that are being mismanaged or don't have enough money, don't have enough runway. And, you know, if you can find those and acquire them for really cheap prices or even just acquire them for equity, that might be a good scenario for you to grow your business and expand your business as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's really I mean, I was taking some notes here on that, and it's good stuff for sure. We did our first. I did a very small acquisition a few months back with just like a founder community, and you know they were making money. It already paid back the investment and everything. So it was a pretty easy fit for us, and it was a scenario where the founders just kind of wanted to get out anyway. So it worked out pretty well. We're not really keeping up with the business necessarily too much because it is a lot of work, but it's just there. You know what I mean? I think there are definitely things that I would consider doing differently next time we look to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I've had a very different approach to building Entra than the typical Silicon Valley way of doing things, because I think
you have to right now. You have to have a different approach. I think if that same playbook that's been played for the last 20 some odd years is not going to work. It's not going to continue to work.
I think I don't know the exact numbers, but I mean, for the last several years, most of the big VCs, even what are considered the best VCs, have not made any money. Even the companies that went public, now that they've been public, their market caps are
like 80% down. Like they're like 80%.
So yeah, it's insane. And so it's like, oh, well, a lot of people look at them for advice and stuff, and it's like, well, are they really even doing that well in reality? And is the Silicon Valley model broken? It worked when it did, but you know what I mean? So I don't know. I come from like an engineering background.
I have a lot of VC friends that are really, really like the bigger VCs. And I talk to them, and they're talking to these founders that have, maybe 6 months of runway left. And they're just this concept of what their business is and how they run their business and how they have been running businesses before is so ingrained in their mind that it's very hard to shift their perspective. Traditionally, up until, I don't know, this .com boom, which, I mean, I guess after there were two booms, right? Like businesses were meant to be run profitably, right? Like the point of doing a business was to make money, right? And like that concept is like super foreign to a lot of founders, and shifting their perception and shifting the way that they think about things, and what they should be focusing on versus not focusing on is very difficult. And I think it's going to be a learning curve for a lot of people, and a lot of people who cannot adapt and adjust, which is a really important part of being an entrepreneur, is they're not gonna survive. And you're seeing that right now, right? Like you're seeing I have a bunch of portfolio companies that are already, are either are on the verge of going bust or went bust, and that's just the way it works.
Yeah, I think that adaptability is like key. I think you have to, and we've done that a lot, like since we started over the last few years. So it's been crazy. But yeah, I wanna open it up. We have some questions here that have been coming in.
Sure.
And I want to also make sure we are gonna do a giveaway. We're gonna give out a copy of Shane's book as well for one of the attendees too at the end.
By the way, this is the book, so if anybody
nice, looks great.
So yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, so we'll give out a copy here to someone. I'll do like a question. We'll just do like a little trivia at the end. See if people were paying attention. And we'll give out a copy. So let me come back up here and find. Okay, we got a couple questions here. All right, so I don't know if you actually got into it, but how did you get into the nightlife industry? Like, was it because you were at med school? You said you failed a company. So how did you actually get into the nightlife space?
So I actually I left medical school. My friend and roommate at the time was working at Goldman. I was going to NYU Med, and he's like, "Dude, stop studying like a maniac every day. People are making millions of dollars doing startups. You know how to code. I know how to get the money. Let's do this." And we came up with an idea, which basically, now it would be called Microsoft 365, right? But at that time, there was no like terminology for this, right? There was no terminology for cloud. There was no terminology for SaaS. So we called it an ASP, which was an application service provider. And we were using Citrix to deliver your Windows-based applications to you virtually. So like now every application is web-based, but back then everything was Windows-based. And the idea was to build this what we created an app store. We didn't even know how to call it an app store. So you could go in and like pick the apps you wanted for your employees, like QuickBooks and all that kind of stuff, and pay for it on a monthly basis. And the idea, the way we were describing it at that time, which again is like really antiquated, is we called it utilitizing computing, right? Like you pay for your computing like you pay for your utility bill. Like you don't care where your electricity comes from or your water comes from. You shouldn't care where your compute comes from. So again, way too early for its time, went bust. And actually at that time, the dot-com bubble burst and 9/11 happened also subsequently. And so I was a programmer, right? Like I was the CTO, and I had a lot of programming skills at that time, and I couldn't even get a job because like every startup went out of business, right? So at the time, my girlfriend was going to college in New York City, and she worked the door at a couple of clubs like on the side to make money. And so I was going out to because I had nothing else to do basically. And while I was there, I was just kind of watching what was going. I wasn't like partying. I was like just hanging out. And, you know, I started watching what was going on around me, and I saw people giving out flyers, and they were going out on the floor. And I saw what, you know, at that time they had list girls that would go around and take your phone number, and then they would call you to tell you about the next event that was going on or the next party was going. And I'm like, this is crazy backwards, right? There should be an email list. There should be like, you know, there should be a website where people can go and check out to see where to go that night. And there was like only Time Out magazine at that time. I don't even know if they're still around or not. So like it evolved like that. And then like, how did I get into it? I faked it. I like went to one of the clubs and pretended I was someone and that I didn't want it. And if they were to have charged my credit card for the event, which they didn't do, thankfully, because I had to guarantee the event, it would have like declined. Like that's, you know, that's what it's in the book, but that's basically how it happened. And then once we had a little bit of success, then, you know, that we built on top of that.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, I wasn't partying. I was just hanging out. Well, use that next time.
I really wasn't. Like I was just.
It's funny and it happens to me too. Like as like a tech person, you go into an environment that isn't really tech like savvy, and you're just like, okay, this is stupid. Like you can automate this and that, and it's like so archaic. And I mean, I was telling my dad probably, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years ago, because he works in like finance, and then he literally had like physical copy, like booklets and like everything, files for all of his clients and everything. And I'm like, Dad, like put this in the cloud. Like why do you like you have to go into your office to get something? Like you can access it from your phone, and then like a year later,
like that.
Yeah, a year later or whatever, his boss, like they moved everything to the cloud. And I was like, it's inevitable. Like you have, like, it makes your life so much easier. It just makes sense. And I think a lot of people tried to avoid technology because they don't want to spend the time to learn it, and they want to keep doing things the way they have done them. And I think that ends up hurting them, you know, in the long run.
Look, I mean, to your point, we were talking about acquisitions. I think that like 60-70% of most businesses out there, there are like a lot of really profitable businesses out there. And there's like a lot of people online that talk about this, about acquiring like laundromats and plumbing businesses and, you know, all these other businesses where they're like, you know, they're doing pen and paper still, right? And you know, if you're a tech person, you can go into those businesses that are already making a lot of money, cash flowing, and you could potentially, you know, increase that substantially. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like if you have a really big, I don't know, whatever kind of business makes a lot of money, like, you know, lawn mowing business or whatever it may be, right? Landscaping business. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be the next, I don't know, Google, right, to make a lot of money, right? Yeah. And or be the next AI platform. There's like opportunity everywhere, and you would be surprised of how many businesses are exactly like what you said with your dads, right? Like they have physical files. They still like call each other. They don't email. They don't, you know, they use Yahoo as their email agent, you know, like thing, or, you know, or AOL, which is even worse, right? So, you know, there's a lot of entrepreneurial ways to make money that are not just doing a startup that you would think is like a new app or a new SaaS business or, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's crazy how many, one thing I saw too is how many companies are owned by individuals or families that are going to be retiring over the next, like it's baby boomer businesses. And so yeah, I mean,
and they make a lot of money. and they make a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So
They're gonna just shut those things down. They don't even know that they can sell those businesses.
right. And then most of the time the kids don't want to deal with it, and it ends up just getting kind of lost in the
there's no like central repository for these things. So like if you really wanted to do this, right, you're gonna have to like open, go Google these businesses and then like go to the business and talk to them.
Yeah, no, and because they're not going to go online. They're not going to go to acquire.com and whatnot.
No, you're not going to find them.
It's definitely interesting. I think it was funny. I don't know why. I can't remember why we were looking this up, but Tabasco is like literally a 300-year-old business, still private, still family owned. The CEO is like fifth generation.
Billions of dollars or something like that.
They only have 150 employees, and most of them are family members and stuff. It's out of Louisiana. They ship all over the world. Their products are everywhere, and it's like 150 people, and they're making billions of dollars, and it's just a family-owned thing that they've been doing for however long. So it's like, it's
like a business you wouldn't even think about. And I think nowadays to start these businesses, you got to kind of really think outside of the box and be willing to do what other people are not willing to do, or go to places where people are not willing to do, or look at things that people are not willing to do. So that's like probably, especially if, again, you're not one of those people. You're not famous. You don't have a big following. You don't have, like 2 exits under your belt or that kind of thing. This is where you might find some success.
Yeah, love it. Totally agree. I think it's great. I think it's great.
But this one, if I could turn back time, would you do? No, I would. I really wouldn't. I think that I read a book recently by 2 AI guys. I forgot the name of the book, but the idea was that, to get to a goal, right? Everybody kind of looks for the path to the goal, right? And trying to get straight to that goal, right? And a lot of times there are a lot of blockages to that path, right? And there's AI algorithms that prove this, by the way. But the way to really, the fastest way to get to your goal is through what's called a novelty search. So you should be really searching for novelty versus, the straightest path to your goal. And if you're willing to modify your goal, right, because you found novelty into something else, that's how you ultimately end up getting, finding success. And so, if I were to have said to myself at that turning point when I was like hanging out and not partying, if I was just like, I can't go into nightlife, well, like what kind of business is that? And, I have a degree in this, and like I'm better than that, or start saying stuff like that to myself. Like I would have never taken the twists and turns that brought me here. And listen, a lot of it has to do with luck too. But you have to, you make your own luck to a degree. So I think you should be really kind of open-minded and not saying that you won't do something or you won't look at something, and that kind of thing. So no, I wouldn't change anything. Really.
I love that. I think it's something that I try to really lean into. I try to avoid specific goals. For the most part, I tend to lean on the feeling, and more like just focusing on like gratitude and all of that. I've learned that through some different mentors of mine. And I think that's it keeps it open, because you're not that smart to know what you want in 5 years, right? And we all change, we all evolve. So if you're too specific on one thing, then you limit yourself for what could be even better, that you don't even know about yet. And if you're
100%.
too fixated on something, now it's not, there's different ways of approaching. If you're like very like, I want to go to the NFL, and there's nothing wrong with like having a very set goal and stuff. But I think in business, it's a little bit different. It's a little more fluid. And I think, I think you end up putting limitations on yourself that could otherwise be opportunities that you'll miss if you're too, I think, fixated on one specific thing. It's like, I want to go public. Well, it's like, well, maybe getting acquired actually ends up being an even better opportunity for you and ends up creating, a better lifestyle that you really want instead. So I think, going into nightlife, going into real estate, it's like, well, keep your options open. And I think don't get turned off by different possibilities.
Listen, I put the name of the book there. It's called Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned, The Myth of the Objective, actually. So, objectives here are goals, right? I'll give you another example. I was born and raised in New York. If you told me, I moved to Miami 10 years ago, almost. And even a month before I moved, if you told me I would move out of New York, I would have thought you were bananas. I was always a hardcore New Yorker. I thought New York was the best place in the world. Nothing could be better, yada, yada, yada. Now, if you ask me, there is no way I will ever move from Miami. And, it was like a total step up from New York City for me, right? So again, if you're too rigid in what you think and what you believe, and you're not willing to pivot and you're not willing to try new things, like really try new things, then, I don't think you're going to get close to, where you want to be.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Before we get into the giveaway, now that you're done with the book's out, what's next for you? Are you planning to just continue investing, mostly real estate, startups? Are you looking to start a new business? Are you going to do another book? What's on the plate for Shane in the next few years?
So it's really ironic, actually. I'm buying an event space in New York City that I did a lot of business in, and it's so awesome. Funny how like things come full circle. Yeah. A lot of people are buying real estate in South Florida. I've been a net seller. I'm now betting on New York because everyone thinks it's New York City is done. I know a lot about the event space, so no one's really like looking at this particular kind of like niche of real estate. Event spaces are, not really well known. But what's interesting is that events is the most profitable part of hospitality. So if you look at like, restaurant chains that have event spaces, they don't really make money on the restaurant operations. They make money on private events and private dining, where the margins are like almost 60%.
Weddings.
And the reason why is that with an event, you know exactly how many people are coming, you know how much food to get, you know how many people you need to staff it with. And so with restaurants, it could be raining that day and no one comes to your restaurant, and you bought all the food and you bought all the, all the waiters and the chefs and everybody's there, right? So I'm making a big bet on that. I think that, events and hospitality is going to continue to grow in New York City. And it's one of the bigger deals I've ever done, actually, because this is like a half a city block, huge events.
Wow. Are you able to share what the space is?
Yeah, it's public information. So it's 130 Bowery. It's in Bowery in New York City.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
So
Yeah.
it used to be called Capital, but we're going to rebrand it and that kind of thing. And so we're doing that. We bought it out of bankruptcy, so I think it's like a great, it's a great time. You want to buy things when people don't want them, right? Because they're cheap.
Yeah, this is sick.
Yeah, it was an old Bowery. It was the Bowery Bank before that. So
are you going to do? What's the plan for types of events? Are you going to do weddings and
yeah? So it's in my book, which is even crazier. And I wrote this book like a year and a half ago, and it took like 6 months to get it published. And I didn't know that I was buying this place in the book. This is like a new development. But it's been a very successful event space that's kind of I think it had some mismanagement and some issues with the owners. But for the last 22 years, it's been like a very high-end event space where they do weddings and corporate events and Sweet 16s and those types of things. I actually got married at this place, which is
no way.
Yeah.
So it's like a perfect scenario. Yeah. Yes. It's New York weddings are next level. My sister just had her wedding in New York in June. It was at Tribeca rooftop, and it was.
I've been there. It's a sick venue. It's a great venue. Yeah. It's really big too. So it must have been a big
yeah, party. It was. My sister likes to, she likes to. She has a lot of friends, and she likes the whole experience. So yeah,
I had my prom there, which like our prom was at Tribeca.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations on that. That's huge. Definitely let me know how we can help with that. We're going to start doing some events in New York here.
Anytime you guys want to do an event, you're more than welcome. We'll make special room for you guys.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're planning like a founders night in probably the end of September, maybe October. With Fidelity and a couple other companies. So I'll keep you posted on that. And we might be doing some stuff in Miami as well. Jarrett, who's helping with our he helps a lot with. He has a community on Entra, and then he'll help stream some of our events and stuff out. He's in Miami, and we're gonna start doing some events together down there too. So we'll keep you in the loop with everything. But yeah, so for the giveaway for Shane's book, what we're going to do is basically the first person to put the correct answer in the room chat will win the book. So the question is, what are the two main companies, companies that Shane started? One was a texting platform. The other one was an event email software. He mentioned both their names quite a bit throughout the live stream here. So the first person to put those two companies in the room chat will win the book. And let's keep an eye on this here.
You can Google it, so you can cheat.
Let's see who's paying attention.
I linked it too, so whatever. And by the way, I'm more than happy to give it away to more than one person, whoever wants it. Just message us, we'll send it to you. No problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a copy for myself as well. And I think that there's gonna be hopefully some others that are gonna buy it after we push this out. So it's been good. Sean. Sean, I'm happy.
That's actually correct. That is cool.
Junebug and Easy Tech. Well, Easy Texting.
It's okay.
Technically, but that works. That works.
Well, he'll get it right after he gets the book. So there you go.
Yeah, no, this was great. Okay. Shane, I appreciate it, man. Anything else you want to share? Anything else?
No, nothing. But thank you so much for having me. This was super fun, and I really enjoyed it. I hope that your audience, maybe got some tidbit somewhere out of it that helped them. And, I hope the book helps someone else in the same way. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Where's the best place for people to connect with you if they want to follow your stuff? Socials, email, LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yeah, sure. Sure. I mean, I think if you want to get in contact with me, you can email me through my website. I look at all of those, shaneneman.com, or I'm on Instagram, Shane Neman, that kind of thing. So I'm not that hard to get in touch with.
All right, perfect. Well, Shane, really appreciate it, man. It was good. It was good seeing you and catching up. I'll definitely let you know next time I'm down in Miami, and we'll keep you posted on all the stuff in New York. We'll also shoot over the recording for you and the team, and we'll get this posted out on socials and stuff for you as well.
We'll love that. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks everyone for hanging out. If you guys enjoyed this, make sure that you sign up for future events and everything. Give Shane a follow on social, and tune in.